But most people are going for quantity of sensation and quantity of things. To refine the quality, you have to do without other things. To become a good musician, you have to do the scales, you have to play things well, you have to really work it for a long time and give up a lot of other things to get good at something you want. So some people have a great capacity to do this. They have their Venus well matured. And they've worked on things, been able to get something they really want. A lot of people are just trying to get a date or get drunk or get something in the moment, or just living superficially in the moment. They're not taking the time, hanging out in the bar, hanging out here. They're not taking the time. The money they get to pay the rent, they're taking a job they don't like, but it pays the rent, but they got a place that's not really where they want to live. And they spend their time off getting drunk to forget about it. Of course, in that process, there's not a lot of necessarily, doesn't necessarily build up help one grow one's values or grow one's sense of appreciation or self-worth. You get content with lesser circumstances, but Saturn comes in and brings these crises up. It brings these limitations up. It holds you back when you're not getting what you want. You know money's going to be tight and you'll be controlling it. You know emotions are going to be tight and defensive, or you're either controlling them or defending them. You're not going to be showing your feelings or your emotions very much when Saturn's there. Or if you are, you're going to be showing your discontent. This is going to affect your mind. This is going to affect your confidence. It's not so. The minute something happens with Venus, it's going to get dumped into the mind. It's going to be dumped on the behavior patterns. It's going to be dumped on the sun. So we have this going on all the time. So it's rarely exactly all this or all that. But Saturn coming up to hit Venus, you're going to see things that affect how well you like yourself, how beautiful you are, how not beautiful you are, and you're emotionally inhibited or limited. That inhibition can create great ambition, or it can create a great despondency and why bother? No one loves me anyways. I'll never meet anybody anyways. I better just settle for this. So part of that's the mind, but really it's an emotional evaluation. What's too much? What's too little? What's enough? What's contentment? What's satisfaction? So if you're normally going along in a satisfactory relationship, and you go along in a relationship, Saturn's going to hit your Venus, your relationship's not going to be so satisfying. Do you throw out the relationship because it's not satisfying for a year? Do you put up with it, or do you get other things that would satisfy you? Or are you expecting too much for it? If you're just going on lust, the lust is going to be went into limits. If you're not going on lust and there's no lust, you might need a little. Like things will come up. So this is, you can see Saturn on someone's Venus. You can feel that concern. Someone could be so worried about money, or threatened, I don't have enough, I'm not beautiful enough, so much business. Most things are sold based on, you're not beautiful enough, buy this shampoo, buy this hair color, buy these things, get this dress, get these pants, get this suit. It makes you look better. And we have to bet more money to buy into it. It's all business world is tied up to that. But it's not just the business world, it's your contentment, it's your talents. You could be a very talented person, and when Saturn's on the Venus, you don't think you're talented enough. You don't go with what you really want because you think you're not fitting in. You feel it doesn't. That sense of emotional confidence, when we got it, we ride with it, we accomplish many things. When we don't, boy, it's a real struggle to emotionally reassess or reevaluate. To take a step back, I'm not getting what I want. How can I change this? What can I do? Redefining it. You don't redefine your values unless your values are being pressured or restricted. So that initial first wave of depression is when people tend to come in for a consultation. What's happening? But they may not if they don't have the money, but that genders a tendency to create the anxiety. And then as it reaches this exact aspect and starts pulling off a little bit, it starts creating a judgments made around that condition. Some judgments made, and you're going to live in it for next. That judgment will get you past that point for better or worse, and you're going to live it, and it's going to come back up. The results of those choices will show 7 years later as a greater success or an ongoing failure or restriction. So there's a lot of conditions to understanding what Saturn's doing to Venus. The most is knowing Venus well in the chart and So you're not doing everybody's chart so thoroughly and deeply, but when you start running across, so Saturn's going to hit the Venus, whoa, you stop, you back up, you look at the categories of the signs, the attitudes, you look at the houses, you look at the aspects. You don't just look at the aspect, oh, that's afflicted, because you're still not going to see the behavioral patterns of the Venus. You'll see the amount of stress involved, and you could draw to too quick a conclusion. But by setting it up and seeing how each of these bends happen in a lifetime, you begin to see patterns of how it more or less works. Therefore, when you're going into the future, you can anticipate, well, this happened the last time, this happened the last few times. It's probably tied up to that. It gives you a much more credible thing to work with. And so you say, oh, if I have to deal with that again, oh my goodness. But with Saturn to Mercury and Venus, these inner planets, you are dealing with inner depressions or inner discontent with Venus, boredom with Mercury, but they're internalized things and they can seem really depressing and wondering how do you pull someone out of that pit? Usually by explaining the whole process and seeing how it works around and aligning someone up to their main Saturn cycles. So there's just a question of some alignment is needed because you're not happy. Are you worried too much? Sometimes you make a big commitment when Saturn's on a Venus. I make a big commitment to solve it, and sometimes you have the money to back it up. Sometimes you don't, and it requires a lot of work to deal with it. If you're a mom, it may come from your daughter or from one of the kids getting in trouble or not doing what you want, and there's a fight there. It's not like a Mars fight. It's like a restriction and like a discontent. How much discontent can you take before you try and get away with something, before you have to do something? How much time can you spend sleeping with someone you don't want to sleep with? How much time? What are you going to do? It's like, so you have the kids. The kids are growing up. All of a sudden, they're thinking of their own life. Nobody's thinking about you. And what are you doing? Nobody's ignoring. No one's caring about what you want. Everybody's doing what they want. And they were what you wanted, but you have to catch up. So at every age, how old, how beautiful we are, Venus. At each age, how rich, how successful, how valuable we are, and how we get older. So the reason you know there's a God is that beautiful women and handsome men turn 50. So what you can get away with when you got good looks, boy, everything comes your way when you're younger. When you don't, as you get older and you start losing it, whoa, it's a serious issue that's not coming back. So age is one of the factors. How good we look, how we don't. Like, all of these things, the results of choices, the karma of choices. But the Saturn conjunct the Venus is the beginning of the cycle. What year did it start for you? Where was the beginning? What happened then? How was that? And then once you've gone through 30 years, you've gone through one cycle of Saturn, you're repeating it. So you're seeing what went before. And it's you're either repeating the same thing on a lateral move, or you're evolving the spiral, or you've grown through it. Wow. Okay, let's just take Venus. Here we go. Okay, so it's Saturn to my Venus. The first square, my brother was born, my grandma died, my grandpa died, and my uncle all died in that same year. But the brother being born was probably my greater loss of glory, having to have a brother and have it not being just me. That was good in some ways, but it was challenging in others, just a kid having to share mom. And in that same time, my folks shortly thereafter were splitting up. And we were in a foster home for a little while and got taken back. So there were a lot of emotional things of not being wanted going on that's very subliminal in my mind. But when the Venus conjunct, so my brother was born when Venus conjuncted, and Saturn conjuncted my Venus, my mom got pregnant again, and my second brother was born, 10 years younger than me, but he was born, and he wasn't the most healthiest of kids, but he demanded a lot of time. And each of these births really changed my life or how much attention I got, or whether I was wanted or not. I felt isolated or alone a little bit more. And yeah, so um, that was a formative thing. If I went forward, um, brother born, for sure. I just got married and I bought a property in Willow Beach. I was living by a lake. I was living by water at the conjunction too, by the river, and living by a lake when Saturn conjuncted to Venus again in my fourth house. So, and the third time I went to China and I started doing a lot of different types of video work, video things. So I went to China. So I've had the three conjunctions, and they both were very formative in what I wanted or what I didn't like, what I wanted, what I didn't want. I mean, there's all kinds of stories to go into this, but we're looking at factors that how the cycles start and go on. But out of these times, I had to make decisions. I wasn't being like at home. It was my second brother being born. At 85, when Saturn came on the Venus again, I was married. I bought a cottage and built it, but there were problems with it, and I couldn't make enough money being out there. I had to be half in Toronto, half back. So there's problems that were coming around that of how well I could maintain it. But the marriage only lasted for another year, and I had to let it go, both the property and the marriage. So, okay. So you're going to see when your Saturn conjuncture Venus and when it starts and what age you were at, how happy what was let down, what happened, what affected your emotions and your values and your decisions. It's not always a specific thing. It can be a bunch of things, but they're emotional. And